Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loki here. Join me today as I share 11 things I'm doing in my November garden. So let's go. Fall is in the air. Things are definitely slowing down, but there are things that I still need to button up before the snow starts flying here in New Hampshire. I thought it would be fun for me to make this video just to share with you some of the things that I'll be tackling this month in my garden. And before I begin, if you like this video, please hit the thumbs up button. Also, don't forget to comment and let me know what are some things you're doing in your November garden. And don't forget to add where you live, just so I have an idea. The list that I'm going to share with you is in no particular order. So let's start with the first one, lawn cleanup. I started this process in October, and I'm still continuing the process of blowing leaves off my lawn. And that happens pretty much every 1 to 2 days, as well as going around the yard and continuing to pick up acorns. I'm either doing it by hand, I'm blowing them off with my leaf blower, or I'm using my shop vac. Another thing I've started to do is go around the yard and pick up any of the tree branches that have fallen on the lawn. We get a lot of wind, especially this time of year, and then what will end up happening is as the snow starts to fall and we get a lot of ice, it puts a lot of pressure on the trees. And what ends up happening is a lot of the branches snap and they fall all over the place, including on the lawn. So it'll be a constant thing just going around and picking up all of those fallen branches. Number 2 on my list is flower bed cleanup. I started the process a few months ago, but I'm continuing that process. For example, when it comes to my panicle and smooth hydrangeas, I like to go ahead and just cut off the blooms. And the reason is we get a lot of snow and a lot of ice, which is very heavy, and it can actually end up snapping the branches and doing damage to my hydrangeas. So at a minimum, this time of year, I like to go around and just cut off the blooms. I've started the process. I just need to finish that. Another thing that I still want to do is cut back all my hosta plants. Some years I cut them back just as they're starting to go by, and other years I wait until they've become very dry, very crispy, very dead, and then I come in with a rake and I just rake off all that debris. And that's what I'll be doing this year. If I choose to leave all the foliage there, what ends up happening is there can be a lot of slugs, a lot of snails that overwinter. And I don't want to have that nice home for them because they can damage the hosta quite a bit here in my climate. So I'd much rather just pick up all of the old hosta leaves and dispose of those. I still have some plants that I need to cut back that were hit with powdery mildew, including some of my tall phlox as well as my bee balm. I have a handful of plants that like to self-sow readily, almost to the point of being invasive. So I just need to cut those plants back. And then finally, I like to cut back my maidenhair miscanthus, which is an ornamental grass. It's not a very sturdy type of grass, and what ends up happening with the snow and ice load is that it just flops to the ground. It does not look good in the winter months, so it's better and easier for me to go ahead and cut that back. Number 3 on my list is winterizing hardy and tender plants. For tender plants, I'm talking about tubers, corms, and bulbs, such as those of canna lilies, calla lilies, dahlias, elephant ears. But then I'm also talking about tender plants that don't create a tuber or a bulb. Plants such as fuchsia, dipladenia. I have quite a few plants that I like to overwinter, and so I'm still continuing to get them ready for dormancy. And actually that even includes my bare root geraniums. But then I have a large number of hardy perennials that I also need to winterize. And when I say winterize, what I mean is I need to get them healed into the ground. Unfortunately, it's too late at this point for me to be really going and planting a whole bunch of perennials out in the landscape because I have a large amount of perennials that I need to tend to. So what I like to do is actually just heal those plants into the ground. And that way they are in their pots, they are healed in for the winter, and they'll be perfectly fine out in the elements. As many of you know, I like to sell plants. I have a plant nursery on my property, and I have a number of plants that are still in small little 3-inch pots. They need to be healed into the ground. In fact, the ground usually freezes sometime by the end of November. So I really need to hustle and get all of these plants healed into the ground well before the ground freezes. And yes, I even bought some plants on the end of year clearance, and I need to get those plants healed in as well. Another thing I need to tackle is planting and moving spring blooming bulbs. If I am going to dig up, divide, move, or plant any spring blooming bulbs, I can still do it, but I need to do it before the ground freezes. I have a couple more weeks to tackle that job. But I also have a number of spring blooming bulbs that I had basically stored temporarily in my basement during the summer months. I have them in paper bags. I need to do something with those as well. So I'll be working on those during this month as well. Cleaning up the woods. I live in the country. All around my property, I'm surrounded by woods. With those woods, even though they're pretty, they can make a big mess. Some years it can look like a tornado just came through and ripped all the trees apart, and it looks like a giant mess in the woods. So every year my husband and I like to go through the woods and basically clean up the woods. And the best time for us to do that is actually in the late fall, early winter months, or very late winter, early spring months. A big reason why we like to do this job, basically in the off season, is there's not a whole lot of other things we can be doing in our yard, but that's a great thing to be doing in the garden. And not only that, oftentimes bees like to build nests in the ground. So when the bees are asleep, it's a great time for us to be walking through the woods and picking up all the debris that's fallen. And in case you're wondering, what do we do with all this debris? We actually have a fire pit and we burn it all. It's another great time of year to be doing it. It's not too hot outside. It burns right down, and then I can take those ashes and sprinkle some of the ashes in my compost pile. Speaking of compost pile, that's another thing I'm going to be tackling during the month of November. I have a lot of leaves that have fallen all around my property, and even though I've been blowing them out into the woods, they're still there, and they're still there for me to take from. So what I like to do typically is take handfuls and handfuls and handfuls of leaves, shred them up, and as I'm collecting those shredded leaves, I like to add them into a number of places, and one of them is in my compost pile. In fact, it's a great time of year for me to be trying to heat up this compost pile. And I put mostly leaves that have been shredded, coupled with a lot of the greenery that I've already cut back from all my flower beds. I mix it up really good. I take some of my kitchen scraps as well as anything else I can get my hands on, and I get that pile heating up very nicely. But then what happens is during the winter months, the pile basically slows down. It gets cold. In fact, it gets to be about negative 15 degrees Fahrenheit, January and February. So the pile ends up kind of slowing down during those months. But then the funny thing is it wakes right back up and heats up again as soon as the temperatures warm up. Winterizing water sources. We have a lot of different sources when it comes to water. One of them is the irrigation that we have in our lawn as well as many of our flower beds. We have an irrigation company, and the only time we really call them is in the fall time to come out and basically blow out all of the air from the irrigation lines, basically winterizing the irrigation system. And that's already been done. However, I wanted to share it because it's important to do. We usually want to do it well before the ground freezes. Another thing that we've done recently that usually gets done in October or November is removing the timer from our raised beds that we have in our backyard. I have a small pond near my front porch. We've already gone ahead and we've disconnected the fountain as well as the pump. A number of years ago, my husband and I adopted a spot about 30 minutes away from us, and we went there and we also disconnected the timer and turned off the water going to that area. And then finally, we have some hoses that are attached to water spigots on either side of our house. We've already gone ahead, we've removed the hoses, and then we also just drain the water out of the hoses before storing them for the winter months. Preparing for snow. We always get snow here in New Hampshire. It's not a maybe. Some years we do, some years we don't. No matter what, we always get snow, and no matter what, our ground freezes. So there are many things that we do in the garden to prepare for the snow. One of them is adding wooden stakes in areas where we know we're going to be blowing the snow. We don't hire that work out. Either my husband or I do it. We have a snow blower. So when we're blowing the snow, we want to make sure that we know where the driveway ends and where the lawn begins, because we don't want to be moving the snow blower and ruining our lawn. So we end up putting wooden stakes into the ground, and we have to do that well before the ground freezes. And then there are a whole bunch of other things that we do to prepare for snow. They are garden related. I might as well include them. One of them is we have a very long, very steep driveway, and it can get very icy because it's shaded by the trees so the sun doesn't hit it. So we end up putting our sand barrel out there. So after we snow blow, we end up putting a nice layer of sand on the very steep part, just so anyone coming and going doesn't get stuck on our driveway. The shovels, the buckets of salt and sand get added to our porches, just so we can easily treat those areas. The snow blower gets serviced and we move that into the garage because we need to be able to access it to blow the snow. This outdoor furniture I've been keeping on my porch the last few years. But normally, most of the outdoor furniture that we have around the fire pit, our back porch, our front porch, all of that gets stored away for the winter months. And in case you're wondering, where do we store all this furniture? We bring it up the stairs in the barn, and up on that top level there is a great place to store everything. Outdoor holiday lights. I have learned my lesson. There have been times when I have started putting my outdoor holiday lights right after Thanksgiving, because technically we want to wait, right, until Thanksgiving. But what I've learned is it can be super cold. And in fact, sometimes we have snow as early as Halloween. So I found that it's so much easier, so much better, more enjoyable to get those holiday lights out on a warmer day. And when I say warmer day, it might be in the 50s or 40-degree Fahrenheit range, but I will take that over being in the 20s. Cleaning out birdhouses. I love my birds. I love to feed the birds, and I have a ton of birdhouses all around our property. So one of the big things that we like to do is go to each of the birdhouses, open them up, and clean them out. And at a minimum, we might not do a deep cleaning, but at a minimum, what we do is just pull out any material that's in there. At this time of the year, birds are no longer breeding, so it's a great time to be doing this. If we wait until the spring, sometimes we miss that opportunity in its breeding season. And what's also nice is the birds continue to use the birdhouses through the winter months. And the reason I know it is I see it. It's so fun to watch them. They use the birdhouses as a place to roost. Those really cold, really windy days during the winter months, oftentimes the birds will go in there just to get away from all of that. So I want to make room in those houses for those birds, because oftentimes there'll be multiple birds roosting in a birdhouse. Last but not least is cleaning and moving all of my seed starting supplies. I like to start seeds indoors under grow lights, but I also like to do winter sowing. I'm still doing the process indoors, but then I'm bringing those milk jugs outside. I store all my seed starting supplies upstairs in my barn, and it's a great place for all of that to be spring, summer, and fall. But in the winter months, I definitely don't want to be going into the barn every single time I need a pot, a tray, peat moss, vermiculite, anything that I need in terms of seed starting, or even my milk jugs. And what I end up doing is not necessarily moving all of it because it's a lot, but parts of each thing that I'm going to need into my attached garage. And so you can imagine when it's super cold out, it's the middle of winter, it's so convenient to just open up the door into my attached garage, and that's where all my seed starting supplies are. And there you have it. Those are the 11 things that I could think of that I'm working on during the month of November. And not only am I working on it during the month of November, I really want to be done with a lot of this before Thanksgiving, because my children come home from college and I want to enjoy my time with them. So now you know what I'm going to be doing for the next few weeks, but I'm interested in knowing what you're going to be doing. Please drop it down in the comment section below. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening. And before I forget, the last one that I just thought of, waking up those Amaryllis bulbs so that they bloom for the holidays. If you haven't already, either go out and buy your Amaryllis bulbs, or if you have them in dormancy, bring up at least one, if not more, Amaryllis bulb and wake it up so that hopefully it blooms for you within the next few months.